His mission, his life's mission. And this man goes all the way back to the founding and Mr. Masuda. I don't believe Mike will tell us this story, but I've heard it before of Mr. Masuda presenting Mike with a golden set of Magboys, one of my very favorite products. But Mike is someone who has been connected at a very deep level to this idea of humans being more. And we're going to hear some amazing things from our Royal Diamond, all the way from Toronto, Canada. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Mike DiMuccio.
Thank you. Woohoo! All right. How do we transition from what you just had? How about we all stand up? Give your head a shake. We're on a completely different planet right now. This is going to be very different than what we've been in right now, which has been the head. We're going to get into some stuff that starts with the head, but is going to move into the heart. So, you can sit down now. Thank you. I've been doing this presentation now in bits and pieces for a few years, but it's a rolling, evolving thing, and it's become a lot of fun to hang on, my power's out. Yeah, oh shoot, we'll start it out. Hey Rick, can I get your hand here? Just give this, I think I got a reboot. My battery's just saying it's not charging, so let me figure out what's happening.
Let me restart this thing. I think it went into sleep mode and it was unplugged. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike DiMuccio. This is a big deal, guys. I'm not kidding, buddy. People pay a ton of money to do what he's going to give you. This is a big deal.
It was the plug that wasn't working. This one's working now. All right. So, just a bit of history on this. I've had a lot of mentoring and mentors work with me. And some of this information is stuff that they've presented to the world. Some of it is material that I've read over the last 25 years. Some of it is based on my background in aerospace engineering, a subject that I've not lost track of. I'm quite interested in all the new discoveries that are happening in the field of science and research, because it seems to be bringing the world to a place where we understand some of the myths. I call it myths, things that we've been taught through the ages without having a real appreciation or understanding for why they may be true. And I'm the kind of person who was born always asking questions. I want to know why everything is, how everything works. So I wanted to know the cause to understand the effect. I was one of these people who just didn't accept the status quo or the simple answer. I wanted to understand it from a different point of view. So I had a few things happen in my life that really allowed me to cement this and experience this. I'm going to share my story a little bit at the end there. But it's called the law of attraction, this presentation, incorrectly. Hopefully by the end of it, you'll see why it actually ought to be called something else. Anyway, so let's just go ahead and jump in here. Now, I'm going to tell you right up front, some of the things that I say may strike you as odd, or may even challenge you based on this particular conversation we're going to have right now. What world do you live in? How many of you live on a flat world? Are you sure about that? How many of you live in a round world? You're pretty convinced of that, right? Now, had I asked you that question maybe 500 or 1,000 years ago, what would have been the answer in this room? Really? What changed? Perception. All that change is what we believed to be true, because now we believe it's round. What's really important about this example is it wasn't a fact that it was flat. It was just what we believed. And so it's not always the truth, what you believe. It's just what you believe. But it has an effect. It has an impact. Because if you believe the world is flat, pretty unlikely you're going to jump on a boat and expect to travel around the world, right? You would not have actually thought of such an idea. If you believed the world was flat, you could not have conceived of sending a satellite into orbit. That would never have entered the mind of man. And so we wouldn't have satellites. What else wouldn't we have if we didn't change our mind about that simple idea of the world being round versus it being flat? We wouldn't have cell phones. We wouldn't have, television. We wouldn't know what's going on the other side of the world, etc., etc. So you can imagine how radical the world changed just because we chose a different belief. Again, it wasn't what we believed, it wasn't the truth that we believed, only what we believed to be true. But it paralyzed us from any other possibility until we accepted the new truth. So essentially, what we learn from this simple example is that beliefs are the governor of what is possible for our experience. They are not telling us what is true, they're just telling us what is possible for our experience, regardless of what those beliefs are. Now consider what you believe to be true about these three words: happy, happiness, health, and wealth. How many people would like to be happy, healthy, and wealthy? Well, in this room, I should hope that everyone knows that, right? Now, if we looked and took stock of how many people actually are happy, healthy, and wealthy, what would the answer be? Well, in the case of happiness, they say about 20% of the population. Healthy, that's a little bit over 30% of the population, about 35%. And, well, wealthy, that's really pathetic, isn't it? About 1% of the population. So how is it possible that those results don't align themselves with our desires? What is it that we believe to be true about happiness, health, and wealth? We're going down the path of our belief, and yet the results are where that path is taking us. Is that not that many people are happy, healthy, and wealthy? In fact, it's pretty unpopular, isn't it? So if you ever expect to be happy, healthy, and wealthy, don't expect to be popular. So it's very unpopular, yeah. But the point of this whole slide, why I start this presentation with this, is because there's a whole series of beliefs that we hold true on some level within us that we are experiencing as a result, but we're not challenging as a belief. We look to the outside world to explain why is this happening. And then what we do is we look to people on our left and on our right and say, well, it's happening to others, so I guess I'm normal. It's okay. And we justify and become complacent to results that are simply contradictions to our nature. Our very nature is to be healthy. Our very nature is to be happy and prosperous. That is our divine right. And yet we somehow, as a society, accept less. Again, where is the source of that? How come we're not going around the world or shooting into outer space or whatever? Because we're still living on a flat world, metaphorically speaking. But if we were to shift our belief ever so slightly, and maybe even in a big way, what other possibilities would open up to us that we don't yet conceive of because we're limited by our own beliefs? So, what if they're wrong? What if those beliefs are just simply limitations? Let's take another look at a reality here. This was done in 1966. This is called the Baxter effect. And February 2nd, 1966, a polygraph test was done. A fellow who worked for the CIA, Baxter, was having fun in his laboratory one day. You know, how many of you believe that if you talk to a plant, it'll actually respond? It'll actually how many of you don't think that's just a bunch of nonsense? Oh, nobody put their hand up. Okay. Cool. Well, turns out, maybe you're not so crazy after all. In 1966, this guy decided he was going to test the theory by putting a polygraph on a plant, figuring, well, if it works on people, it should work on plants. There should be some kind of a reaction that's notable. So he puts the polygraph on the leaf of a plant. And during the first part of this, right here at the beginning, you see nothing's really happening. The polygraph is just, humming along, doing its thing. He wasn't sure if it was working, so he tapped the plates just to make sure, and yeah, it was working. There's the tap right there. And it's going along. But while this is happening, while this is going on, he's trying to actually get a reaction out of the plant by doing things, saying things, trying to agitate it, etc., etc. And the plant is simply not reacting. Until one very specific moment. At that very moment in time, he was standing about 15 feet away from the plant. And he had an idea overcoming. He was inspired by an idea. And guess what? Before he did anything, the plant reacted. He was literally 15 feet away from the plant, and all he did was have an idea. Now, he had been trying to get this plant to react, and it didn't. Suddenly, this idea, and the plant's going crazy. Poor design. What he did was he thought of burning the leaf of the plant, lighting a match and burning the plant. And it was just a thought, folks. But there was something different about this thought.
First of all, I did not touch the bottom.
Thank you. What was different about this thought? Well, number one, this thought was obviously going to cause harm to the plant. So somehow, some way, this plant must have suspected it was in danger. Is it possible that a plant is sentient, that it actually has awareness? Why not? Is it possible? Let's just think about that possibility. The plant is reacting, and it's reacting to something. But there's more to this guy's thought. It wasn't just a thought. It was an inspired thought. Because he was frustrated, and his plant wasn't reacting, given all the things that he was trying to throw at it. And it was an inspired thought. What's the difference between an inspired thought and just a thought when you're trying to get a plant to react? What happens? Something about your energy, right? There's clearly a difference in the person's energy when the thought is expressed with emotion. When the thought and the emotion are connected, somehow that communicates differently, and because this particular thought and emotion in the thought was just that, how did the plant know that it was a problem for it? Somehow, the plant not only received that thought, but was also aware of the danger. Now, I'll refer to this book. It's called The Intention Experiment. There's a number of other books out there, but I'm going to get into some of the material now. But the idea of working with plants started there and didn't end. They did some experiments that are absolutely astounding when it comes to plants. At MIT University, they put a plant inside a mu cage. That's a room that's surrounded by, if you heard Julie Tarr's presentation, bioenergetics, it blocks out electromagnetic waves. So you can't think your way into it, you can't radiate your way into it, you can't do anything to affect what's inside there. They put a plant under physical observation. Over on the other side of the pond, in England, they had a group of scientists gather up psychics, renowned psychics. And their objective was to simply imagine the plant was glowing. So remember, these are separated by quite a distance here. Group of psychics imagining the plant is growing, and under physical observation, what do you think they saw at MIT University? The plant illuminated. How is that possible? How come we don't know about this? How come this is not CNN's, news every day? What would be the consequences if we actually believed in that reality? Imagine for a moment. So here's the thing with this thing. Why did they group scientists with psychics? What is it about psychics that they wanted the psychics for? What is it they can do? They can use their mind. In fact, psychic energy is mental energy. They're able to focus that energy. So their mind is highly attuned and focused. They're able to therefore create a stronger message. And they had more than one. Why do you suppose? Where two or more are gathered, there's much more harmony, much more power in that message. And it's actually exponential. So we see the plant react, we see it grow. And now we also learn that it doesn't matter how far away it is, that all you had to do was imagine something with clear intention, and it happened. This is called the intention experiment. So many interesting experiments in that book that science has done. I'm going to show you another one. This is a guy named Dr. Moto. How many of you have heard of him in Japan? Okay, so some of you have seen this photograph. Again, what is this a demonstration of? What he did was he took a vial of water and he would write on the water, of course in Japanese, but he would write a message on the water. Then they would freeze the water and look at it under a microscope. And the message on the water, whether it was written or it was spoken, or even if it was subject to music, or even prayer and meditation, regardless of how you impressed the idea on the water seemed to respond differently with each idea. Somehow the water could distinguish one idea from another. Now, is it that the water is conscious? Or is it just possible that the energy of the idea is being imprinted or impressed on the water and the water expresses it? So what we have on the left-hand side on the top is compassion, then we have thank you, wisdom. Look how beautiful those crystals are. But on the bottom, when subject to heavy metal, music, it couldn't form a crystal. I will kill you, you fool. It doesn't even take a proper shape of any kind in terms of water. And then here's this interesting one. I like this one the best. Water before and after a Buddhist prayer. This was taken out of a poisoned river, bad river, and then they prayed on the water, or meditated, whatever you want to call it, and then they imaged the water, and there it is. How is that possible? From disorder to order. How many of you were taught that it's a good idea to pray before meals? You think it's a good idea? I think it's a great idea. There's a reason. And so maybe this idea that we were taught in a religious context has more substance to it than just an idea, but it actually does have an effect, that our thoughts actually have an effect on the physical world around us, regardless of how far away. Now, what are you made of? Water. How much of you is water? Imagine that. How much of the food you eat is water? And if you have thoughts about somebody, do you think you're having an effect on that somebody? Anybody hear of a concept called the evil eye? Very popular in Europe. Yeah? Is it possible then that when you have thoughts about somebody and they're energized with emotion, that those thoughts are in fact having an impact on the subject? It's very possible. So imagine some of the things that you've learned over your time on earth about the divine laws or the golden, what do you call it? The golden rule. Thank you. The golden rule about do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Is it possible that these ideas are being expressed regardless of what we believe? Yeah, it's quite possible, and there's an impact. So maybe what we should start thinking about is how to utilize this understanding in a constructive way. That's application of the law, right? Let's look at this one. Here is the hand, that is a leaf, and there's a key. Notice something in common. This is called Carillion photography. It's imaging the energy emanating from that material. It looks like we're looking at the same thing regardless of what we're looking at. Is it possible that the energy that makes anything anything is one and the same, just expressing itself differently? Is it possible then that that energy that seems to be omnipresent in all things is what makes the communication possible? Because there is only one field of energy? And it's just simply expressing itself in different forms? We would say this key is not very conscious, but what it is energy. And on the other hand, we have a person. We would agree that humans are fairly conscious, and I say fairly conscious. Some more than others. And of course, that leaf, we know it reacted to some degree to a hostile environment. In fact, there's many experiments that demonstrate that they actually react to a hostile environment. So there's perhaps a degree of consciousness where that leaf is concerned. So we go from maybe an inanimate object that's somewhat unconscious to a living being that's fairly conscious. Yet at the same time, the source of all those things is one and the same. The energy that makes anything animated in any way, shape, or form is one. And therefore, maybe the idea of this universal field that they're searching for, the mathematics that describe the one field, they're just trying to give words to and science to what pretty much most of the people in this room, I think, believe to be true, that there is a creator being, there is a source of all things, and that source permeates all things, and that source is all things, distinguished by levels of consciousness. So energy and vibration. These are the two things that are consistent when it comes to the material world. Everything is energy, and that energy vibrates. It's not static. Did you know that an atom is not something that exists as if it was created and therefore exists? It's actually being animated. An atom is the coalescence of energy in motion. If that energy were to stop moving, the atom would disappear. So matter is not something that was created. It is being created. It's in a constant state of creation. But we call an atom, what holds an atom together, we call it the binding energy. We know it's incredible energy because if we split an atom, what happens? It releases an enormous amount of energy. We call that the binding energy. So, what holds form into form is an enormous amount of energy. Something is holding that energy in place because it doesn't want to be that way. There's a law that says order to disorder. The tendency is for things to become disordered, so something is holding it in order. A source, an energy, an awareness, a consciousness of extraordinary proportions. Is that possible? Is that maybe what we mean by when we talk about the Creator? So energy and vibration is the one thing that's pretty consistent in the material world. Now the books that I'm referring to, The Intention Experiment by Lynn McTaggart, Hidden Messages in the Water, The Field, that was the first book that I read by Lynn McTaggart. Who she is, she's an author, I met her. She was actually just simply a journalist who became fascinated by some of the science that she had covered and decided that she was going to put this work together and shared information with other scientists who were doing related work. They didn't know that there were two camps doing the same research, and she figured if we could put these two camps together, it would accelerate the findings. how important is it to understand the nature of reality? What if, and I'll give an example of the what if. If you heard Rick, he's pretty animated, right? And I'm sure Rick, equipped with what he does, is very competent, very capable. Let's say, for instance, I gave you a script of what I say to somebody that's effective. And you said it word for word the way I say it. Do you think you'd get the same results as me? No. Why not? There's different energy behind the words. The impression that's being made is different. So it's not the words. It's the energy behind them. So if I was serious about helping, whether on my organization or just humanity at large, improve their results, it's not enough for me to give you words. And it's not enough for me to say it this way and do it this way, and you'll get the same results as me. That's not fair either. Because what's behind the words, the energy that's behind those words, is what animates it and creates the effect. So I would have to also include that part of the equation. Otherwise, you might get pretty frustrated if you don't get the results I get doing what I say I do. So I found, in all my years, by the way, I was one of the guys who was developing tools from the beginning of Nikken. I was doing a lot of teachings, trainings. Some of you may remember my first work was Winning Strategies to Create Your Future. Dennis Williams, I'm sure you remember that one. He was one of the biggest customers. And then that was like the first slide presentation and everything. And then I went to another thing called UQ. I don't know if you remember UQ. Anyway, I was always involved in trying to develop the perfect system, perfect franchise model. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't get compliance. I couldn't get my downline to do any of it. As good as it was, as intelligent as the design was, I couldn't get them to get the results that I was getting because it didn't yet come to me, that information that I needed, which was how to solve the gap. The gap was, it's consciousness, right? You can give them the mechanics all day long. But if the intention isn't right, all the mechanisms in the world don't matter. So you've been getting mechanisms. That's what you've been getting, mechanisms. So far, I've been hearing a lot of mechanisms. And I believe that that's great because, we do need a mechanism. If I want to get from here to there, a car would probably be a good idea, right? At this point in time, in our consciousness, at some point in time, it might be I just close my eyes, imagine I'm there, and there I am. But right now, it's still a car. So it's nice to have a mechanism. But if you don't have the intention of getting that, really, all the cars in the world are unnecessary. So getting that part of the equation online makes the mechanisms useful and effective. These books are a really good read. So what I've been describing to you is something you might be familiar with if you've been to Humans Being More. How many of you are graduates of Humans Being More? A lot of you. Okay, right on. Hey Jeff, well done. Now, what do we learn in Humans Being More? The equation I plus M equals R, right? The relative importance of results to intention and mechanism. And I just said, mechanism is, and any infinite number of mechanisms don't matter if the intention isn't there. In fact, in the intention experiment, that's exactly what they're saying. They're saying there is a mechanism. Now, we don't yet have the math. It's close. The unified field theory and string field theory, we now understand that there's a pretty good chance we live in a universe of 12 dimensions, not one. In my house, there are many dimensions. Is that the way it was? Or is it? Yeah. Yes. So we're starting to understand the scripture from a different point of view. But what we also know about mechanism, it's not important. There is a mechanism by which, when I intend a plant to glow, no matter how far away it is, it glows. So there is a mechanism. As far as I'm concerned, it's unknown, therefore invisible to me. But there is a mechanism. There is, by some means, my intention is communicating and causing a result. Do I have to understand that to apply it? No. But I do have to understand what's the cause, creating the effect, if I want to be effective in applying it. And most people spend the majority of their time where? Worried about what?
Mechanism.
The mechanism. And that's not the cause. That's the conduit. The cause is the intention. So I understand that there is an invisible mechanism unknown to me. Call it what you will. Universal mind, God, infinite power, source. There is, by some means, an effect to intention. And intention, as we've also described in an earlier chapter, is thoughts and emotions. Now, this one's a little bit more of a stretch. Stay with me on this one. That is you. Let's just say that's the representation of you. That circle with a heavy border around it. Let's call that everything you think you are and believe yourself to be. Everything you think you are and believe yourself to be. And I'm talking about your likes, your dislikes, what you believe to be true, what you think is true, blah, 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 blah. The sum total of the signature of you in reality. Everything you know to be true about you. Now, I want you to take a look at the person next to you. Just go ahead and look side to side. Now, that person, he or she, let the other circle represent everything that is true about them for them. So there you are, sitting next to one another, and you see yourself as two very distinct and different people, right? Now, do you remember in high school, maybe you didn't do this, but I remember in high school we did a thing called Venn diagrams. You remember that? A Venn diagram. So let's say in this group are all the apples that are green. In this group are all the apples that are red. And the intersection of those groups are all the apples that are both red and green. Okay? So now, looking at that person next to you, do you think there's more in common than there is not? Now, I'll give you an example. Our DNA is about 97% the same as the DNA of a chimpanzee. That's how in common we and a chimpanzee are. Okay? So everything we believe and so forth, I would say there's a lot of things in common. At the root of our belief system, we believe we're on a round planet. It may not even be that, for all we know. It's just what we know for now. It may be a hologram. It's just a complete illusion happening in your mind. I'll give you an example. You're looking at me, right? Are you? Or are you? See, you're seeing the waves of light bounce off of my body. If there was no light in here, you wouldn't see me. So are you seeing me or are you seeing light? Now, what's actually, does it mean to see? You're receiving that light signal through your eyes, and then it's being converted to an electrical system. So now your electrical impulse is hitting your brain, and your brain is imaging me in reverse, upside down. So are you actually seeing me, or are you just seeing something you're conjuring up in your mind? So in reality, there is not one planet at all. There's 7 billion planets being perceived and observed by each and every one of us in our own mind and consciousness. Some might see me as handsome. In some places, they might say, boy, is he ever ugly. It is what it is. It's just an interpretation based on what? Not truth, on what we believe to be true and yet what we perceive or accept as a norm. So here we are. I would argue that there's a lot more common among people than uncommon. And that creates the collective experience. Now, I'm going to superimpose you on a bigger you. Using the same concept of Venn diagram. Now notice you are still in a circle defined by a boundary because you consider yourself finite to some degree, right? You know that there's an end to what you know about yourself on a conscious level. But to the infinite, we cannot put around a boundary. If you remember Venn diagrams, a set that was infinite in nature had to be bound by a dotted line because it's not possible to bound infinity. So, if we were to look at the intersection of you and the Creator, the Divine, the All, the Great I Am, what is the intersection? Don't answer, just ponder this. What is the intersection of you and the Great I Am? The intersection of you and the Great I Am. And the answer is in front of you on that screen. What is the intersection? Where do they overlap? The intersection is not out here. It's right here. Which is what? All of you. The intersection of you and the Great I Am is you. Now, we're taught to believe that God is in us. That's not what that says. Now, what that says is, yes, God is greater than I am. However, the intersection of me and God is me. Now, I can see why a person would stand and say something that they've said. If they were fully conscious and fully aware, they would probably say, I and the Father are one. That's what that's looking like. There's only one thing, anything. Anyway, is the Great I Am. Is there? Can there be something over here outside of God, the Great I Am? Can that exist? If you believe there is only one, and that one is infinite, can this exist and not disqualify that truth? So if you believe the truth, that there is only one, and that one is infinite, therefore there cannot be the end of that and the beginning of something else. Therefore everything is in that, and everything is that. You can't point to something that's not that. That's the most profound thing I'm going to tell you today. And conscious awareness is becoming aware of things on a conscious level. It's understanding things on a to a higher degree. You tell a child, hey, it's good to pray. And they'll do it because you tell them to do it, not because they know why. They just think it's good. But they don't actually understand it's qualifying the food for their nourishment. That it shows us energetically is what's happening. So now why is this truth important? How does this affect your awareness of self? How does this affect your understanding of who you are in the world? How does this affect your understanding of who anybody is in the world? What you say to my brother, what you do to my brother, you do to the least of my brother. So it starts to bring a truth on another level, that allows you to then start moving in the world with a different understanding of who you are and who others are. Do you think that's going to have an effect on how you are perceived and how you are received? Do you think that might have an effect in people being open and willing to listen to something you might want to share? Because what's coming from you, the energy there that's coming from you is reverence for all. reverence for the other person. That is a different energy. Dominance is an energy. Reverence is an energy. Which one do you think is more attractive? And it comes from having an understanding, an awareness. So, when we were born in the likeness and image of the Father, the Creator, whatever you say it is, now we understand what's inferred. If this is the ocean, and this is a drop of water in the ocean, and if that drop of water happens to be awareness of itself, and is also aware that is only a drop in the ocean, but it understands its place, then that's an empowered and a high level of understanding. So the likeness and image, born in the likeness and image, means the very thing that you are is the very thing that everything is that created everything that is created. What we share in common is the ability to create. How we create is exactly the same. Let there be light. So you can create, in fact, are creating your reality. Something, if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? Does it make a sound? No. It makes a noise, but it doesn't make a sound. It makes a vibration, probably, but it doesn't. Now, why do I say that? What is sound? Something that you hear, we call it sound. There has to be somebody perceiving it in order for it to be called sound. And if there's nobody there to perceive it, it doesn't matter if a tree falls in the forest or 1,000. In other words, creation has no relevance whatsoever at all, independent of consciousness. What we're learning is that consciousness is reality. There is no creation outside of consciousness. That if there's nothing to perceive it, it's irrelevant anyway. So consciousness is the creator of everything. You see me how you see me. You're creating me in your mind. You're contextualizing me. You're shaping your thoughts about me and so forth. Each and every one of you are creating a version of me in your mind. You are creating me. Now, there is who I am in the eyes of the Creator, and then there's who you think I am. There is who I am in the eyes of the Creator, and then there is who I think I am. Now, which one do you think is greater? So when I said to you yesterday, we just got to learn how to get out of our way. Because the version of us that's the truth is so much greater than the version of us that we keep telling ourselves. I and the Father are one. So the Father is greater than I is a powerful statement. Let's keep moving on here. So, God is a frequency that exists within us. Tune in. Now, every version of you is right now in this room. The rich version, the poor version. Every version of you is right now in this room. Every sound, every radio station, every music or song that's playing on every radio station is right here, right now in this room. It's right here in this space. How do I know that? Well, if I had a device called a radio, I could tune in to the radio and pick up the frequency of one of the stations and hear what's being played. Or I can dial a different channel and hear something else. So all the music in San Antonio right now is in this room. Right now. All the music. You just have to tune in to the right frequency to hear it. The question is, what do you want to hear? Rock? Country? Pop? You just got to decide what you want to hear and tune in. Dial in to that channel. So there is a frequency that exists within you that knows the truth that is the truth. And then there's that frequency that we dial in that is just a version of it. Our version of it. So the question is, what version of you do you want to start experiencing in life? How many of you done with the one that you got now?
Yeah.
How many want to dial it up a little bit? Yeah. So let this, where I'm standing right now, represent the current you. Let this represent the version of you that you actually want to experience in yourself. If this is the current you, this is what you're really familiar with. It's that circle. But there's a version of you that's beyond, it's off the charts. Right now you're just experiencing this version of you. And maybe 5 years ago you experienced this version of you. But if this is the version of you you want to start to experience, define it. What is it? What does this version of you look like? What does this version of you feel like? What does this version of you say about yourself? What do you hear other people say about you? Define it. All you're doing is choosing the radio station to listen to. You're just tuning in. So, this infinite possibility of you is the same for everyone. It's the universal you, which is infinite in possibility in nature, limiting itself by what it believes to be you. Back to that first slide. The infinite possibility is just defining itself by what it believes to be true about you.
Can you change your mind about that? Hello.
Your frequency, Mike.